my dear listener. Welcome back to Redoctoring with your host, Dr. Diane. This is the podcast that allows you to be a different kind of doctor. Today, I have with us Dr. Adil. He is the Medical Research and Development Head at Old Mutual. His role involves driving innovation in life and disability insurance. I can't believe that doctors can actually work in banks. And I am so excited for this conversation to help learn something new and then also to inspire you as to what else you can actually do with your degree. How are you doing, Adil?
I'm great. And sorry to start off with a quick correction. I mean, Old Mutual does have a bank, but I don't work in the banking division. Perhaps it's
Yes.
good then that we're having this conversation. But let me not hold that against you. I would not have known anything that Old Mutual does before I started this role. So let's just move straight past that.
Wow. No, in my mind, Old Mutual has always been a bank until today, like until just now.
Yeah, no, we started a banking division not so long ago, but our primary business is insurance. And that's where I am based.
Okay. No, I'm so excited. We're going to touch into that. Um, Before we get into it, I just have a few icebreakers just so that,
Sure.
everyone gets comfortable, the listener gets to know a bit more about you. So we'll be playing a game of this and that. Basically, I'll put two
Okay.
options before you and you pick which one is more you.
Sure.
Okay. So firstly, are you a coffee or a tea person?
Definitely coffee.
Okay. I used to be a coffee person, and then as I grew up, I became a tea person. Next up, do you listen more to podcasts or more to music?
Um, Music.
Okay. Any favorite genres, favorite artists?
I love reggae. You might not
Mhm.
assume that by looking at me, but I love reggae. And a new genre
Okay.
I discovered is something called lo-fi reggae. So you take like a classic Bob Marley, but with a lo-fi beat. That slaps for me.
Wow. I think I'll look into that. That sounds so interesting.
Does it? Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Do you prefer flights or road trips?
Road trips. Well,
Mm.
both are very difficult with kids, eh? Just by the way. But I think I
Okay.
still prefer road trips to flights.
Yes. I feel like you get more of the journey and more
Mm,
memories. You create more memories.
yep,
Would you ever do a road trip to another country?
sure. Uh, Perhaps Lesotho. Maybe that's as far as I would go.
Granted, you said you have kids as well, so you need,
I
need to keep
do.
it nice.
Yeah. I think anything further than Cape Town to Knysna is, Dad, when are we there? Can we stop?
Uh,
I need to pee. So no, nothing further than that.
I hear that. I hear that. Next up, are you more of an early morning person or a late night person?
Early morning.
Mm. How early is your morning? Because I know some people start at 3, other people start at 5.
No. I try to wake up just before my kids, so I have some time to myself. So usually at about 6 or just before 6, before the school
Okay,
rush and
no,
the madness starts. Yeah.
that's a good time. That's a good time.
Hmm.
And then, last but not least, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Man, can I say a bit of both? I think it depends on my mood. I love my time alone. Um, Again, not to mention my kids too many in the first bit of the podcast, but they never kind of leave you alone. But then, yeah, so I do also like to be social when I have a full social battery, that is.
I think that the term is ambivert when you are both. I also
But
find that among extroverts, I feel more introverted, and then around introverts, I feel more extroverted. It's
that, that's probably me as well. That sounds like a good insight.
okay. So now that our vocal cords are
Mm,
all warmed up, we
sure.
can get into the meat of the podcast episode. How did you find yourself coming into medicine?
um, I come from a family of doctors. My dad is a pediatrician. Um, My two older brothers are doctors as well. My wife is a doctor. My sister-in-law is a doctor, and in my extended family, I have many other doctors. So it's not it's not so much, I would say, that was expected of you growing up, because I think I've managed to find my own path regardless. Uh, but I've always had this. That's been the shape, right? So the shape of who you are and what's expected of you. Um, the pressure necessarily wasn't on me to study medicine, but the conversations around the dinner table usually revolved around health, um, and especially the overlap between health and social justice. So that kind of really drew me, and helping people was part of it. I had some idea of what to expect going into it, but not entirely. I remember having a very heated conversation with my mom in grade 11 that I wanted to be a vet, and she had none of it. She said, first do medicine and then you can decide. So I know I'm contradicting myself. Other than my mom, I had no pressure to study medicine. Let me clarify. But yeah, so I didn't always have a burning desire growing up to be a doctor. Um, Naturally, that's where conversations would lead at the dinner table, the influences that I would see, um, and it was a natural progression, I would say.
Okay. You mentioned that you have two older brothers, so are you the
Yeah,
youngest?
I'm the youngest. Oldest sister, she's a teacher, and two older brothers, and then myself. Yeah.
I find that parents are a lot more lenient with the youngest ones. So maybe that's why only your mom was like, listen, I need a doctor out of you.
Yeah, she wasn't lenient, but I suppose maybe I'm the exception then to the youngest child rule.
Yes. No, but it all turned out well. How did you, in medical school, you studied in UCT? Were you close to home?
Stellenbosch, so Tygerberg Hospital. Yeah, I stayed at home. I wasn't at the residence. It was close enough to commute um, during medical school time.
Okay. I find that students fare better when they actually stay at home because then it's less of an
Mm.
adjustment into tertiary life.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But on the flip side, I think there's something special about res life from, friends that did experience that. So yeah, it's a bit of a feeling that I missed out a bit. But having said that, the comforts are there, and it does make focusing and studying and thriving a lot easier if you've got a stable home environment you're going to, definitely.
Hmm. Did you find that you were still able to have a very full university experience, like join committees and things like that?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that stopped me. Um, I did what I wanted to do. I joined committees where I felt I could have added value. Um, and then obviously in your latter stages, you don't really want to worry about that too much. You're just kind of worried about the final exams. So that's a natural progression again. Um, but no, to answer your question, I don't think there was anything I wanted to do that I couldn't do because I was staying at home.
Okay, no, that's good. It sounds like you had a very full experience.
Mm, definitely.
You mentioned that your wife is also a doctor. Just by any chance, did you
Mhm.
also meet her in med?
I did. We were in the same class.
Oh, that is so cute.
The first week of first year until today.
Wow. No, medical school. You see, if it didn't give you a degree, it could have given you love, and I think you got both, so that's great.
I'm lucky. I'm very lucky. Yeah.
So now, when you graduated, internship, ComServe, what were your expectations going into being a young doctor working in South Africa?
Uh, just very happy, frankly, to not having to study anymore. I also just at that point started uh, my marriage. We got married at the end of final year, so that was a big transition, obviously. Moving out of the house and finding my own feet. So I didn't pay much attention to it, other than I knew what is expected for the next 3 years, just survive. Um, and yeah, I enjoyed the time, although again, different set of challenges, not studying challenges, but now, working in a public health facilities and the calls, especially that goes and the long working hours that goes with it. So I didn't have any specific expectations other than get through this next 3 years, um, try and enjoy what you can enjoy. And um, yeah, so I didn't have any long term aspirations at that stage.
Were you one of the medical students who felt like they wanted to specialize, or what was your thinking back then?
I don't know, is the honest answer. As I said, I didn't have a clear plan. And I knew that I wanted to do something. I knew that I felt that, you know, I, I had aspirations for something. The challenge that I had, I think, is that I was interested in too many things. Um, I had a clear rule out list, so I knew I didn't want to be an obs and gynae. I knew my hand was not stable enough to be a surgeon. But other than that, I still do have a great interest in psychiatry, in pediatrics, in family medicine, in public health, and so it was all kind of very broad. And I didn't have the time to reflect on what would my next step be. I think, like most, I was a bit tired and fatigued from the environment. So I didn't have a, I'm going to get on the pathway to be a pediatrician and therefore, fine tune my ComServe experience and start working on primaries. And I didn't have that strong desire, but it didn't mean that I did not have interests. It was just kind of more bogged down from the day to day.
I hear that. I hear that. I think similar to you, I also always just thought about when you're in medical school in this career, you're on a
Mm,
treadmill and you're
mm.
sort of just going through, not actually treadmill, but you see that escalator that's flat in the airport and you're
Yeah,
kind of just around it until you reach the end. And I think a lot of people don't think about what comes beyond
what's next?
ComServe.
Mm,
ComServe comes and you're like, oh, wait, there's nothing on the other side. Now I have to decide. How did you
yeah,
find that experience of deciding beyond ComServe?
daunting. I mean, I remember it was October, November of my ComServe year, and I realized um, I don't have a CV. I've never put together a CV in my life before. I had some odd jobs here and there, student jobs, but that, I mean, whatever. Um, but other than that, um, you just focused on studying, and you have guaranteed employment for 3 years, more or less. I know the climate is a bit different now, but more or less for 3 years. And then you have a thought, well, I have MBCHB, I'm a doctor, surely I'll have a job. It doesn't work like that, eh? And that's such a rude awakening. And at that stage, I had a bit of other financial dependencies, car and rent and those things. So I needed to figure out a plan. Um, so thankfully, I mean, if I'm just jumping forward ahead slightly, it all worked out. But no, I didn't have a specific plan until I was almost forced to, um, which is such a gap, I think, with junior doctors as well. I don't think I'm unique in this situation. And I know that because of my peer group that went through it at the time. Many of them were in the same position. I mean, you have the kind of superstar eager beavers, if you will, that know they're going to be a surgeon. And from day one in medical school, they get to be a surgeon. And that's their dream. So that's their path. But most, I think, are probably like me, and it sounds like you as well. You just figuring it out. You more surviving than absolutely thriving, and a lot of it is making sense of it as you go.
Mm. And I think that also just speaks to the beauty of life. I think a lot of things in life are done with uncertainty, and but it's not normalized. It's not the normalized path, especially as doctors from a young age, not young age, but young in our careers in medical school. You always hear, what are you going to specialize in? Like people want to know what's your finished product. And you don't even do that.
Yeah, Can we just celebrate that I have my MBCHP just for a second before you ask me those questions at the dinner table? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, wow. Actually, my favorite thing to do that I learned when I was unemployed in my post-comserve time is to look at people's LinkedIn profiles and see, okay, now they're here, but where did they actually start
Yeah,
off?
yeah.
And I see in yours you were in research at UCT, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I had a great time. And so, I mean, to pick back off where we were, post ComSurf, I had to put together CV, had to be job hunting, and that's exactly what I did, as many people in my position would do. So, looking for locum jobs, looking for GP shifts, uh, looking for something that doesn't involve working at night, right? Um, so it was not intentional. I saw a ad for a research position with UCT. Applied for it, not thinking I would hear back, and I mean I did. And I went in completely blind. I was hopelessly unprepared, but somehow they hired me. And I was there for a year and a half, and I had an absolute blast. I loved every second of it, and it really, to this day, shapes how I think about my role in medicine and my role in um, population level health and how to bring research closer to action. I'm forever grateful to such a great opportunity.
I love how you mentioned that you learned how to bring research close to action because
Mm,
sometimes it feels like research is on the one end and action is on the other end.
mm.
How did you learn to make that bridge a lot shorter?
Yeah, I mean, great question. For those, I know you are in research, as you mentioned to me a bit earlier, but for those that are not in the research, you think publication. I mean, that's what you think, right? But there's so much that goes on well before that, and especially as a junior medical officer in research, um, you are more involved in the operational aspects of the study than anything else. And it could be a clinical trial, it could be a cohort study, whatever it may be. There tends to be an operational aspect that you get involved in. And again, I didn't appreciate any of this coming into the job, but you learn quite quickly that the operational aspects are fundamental into getting the research outcomes. And so you work quite closely with participants, you understand how to take informed consent. um, we worked with a maternal and child study, so we work both with moms and babies, um, and you do clinical assessments, and reporting, and the because it was the primary study was a multi-year longitudinal study. Some of the research findings which were developed in the earlier stage of the study were already being implemented as the kids kind of grow up. That's what I mean. So you see that, okay, this is a method to develop a upscaled um, TB testing solution, and then you see it implemented as part of the study phase design in the next phase. So that was really rewarding, and it allowed me to understand the role of a medical officer in the research other than the publication. Publication is cherry on the cake, if you will, but there's so much that goes into it beforehand that people outside of the clinical research environment would not ordinarily be exposed to.
It's also been mind blowing to know how many processes actually happen behind
Yeah,
the scenes
yeah,
for um, whatever it is that we discover actually goes into play and you actually see it affect lives.
yeah. And you have to work as part of a team. It's not just this one patient in front of me. So therefore, I don't need to worry how my behavior affects the nurse that does the triage, for example. You are so codependent on the entire team. Um, so it really shaped my perspective on that environment compared to the clinical environment which I came from.
Did you do any courses or did you further your knowledge while you were still working in research that helped you progress in that field?
Yeah. So what helped my application, I think, was that I tried to do as many online courses as I could beforehand. Once I had an idea that I wasn't going to go into a hard clinical role, like a EC shift or, you know, MO position in internal medicine. I mean, I did the usual ACLS, which I think everybody does. Um, I tried to find the resources that would make my application for research more appealing. So I did a few online courses that I could find in research, in public health, in epidemiology. Um, some were free, some were paid. Um, but it was an interesting experience because I didn't fully appreciate that it would directly help me. Again, it was just kind of happened that way. And then once I started in fact in my first year of entering the research phase, I enrolled into the MPH program, the Masters of Public Health. And then obviously the two worlds aligned because whatever you're learning on the academic side, you're implementing in the clinical research side. So yeah, great blessing to having entered and then subsequently finished the MPH.
Oh, the master's, was it a two-year course?
Well, depends who you ask. So it's a part time, right? So that
Oh,
everybody's on their journey. So I took about I took about 3.5 years. Um, Technically, if you do it full time, you can do it in 18 months. But most people are working at that stage, so you do it part time. And then it's split 50-50 with coursework and with a mini dissertation. So the coursework is quite simple. Well, I said now, but you know, like any coursework is at postgraduate level. You attend classes, you have a couple of projects, you write exams. That's kind of what we know from undergrad. The real challenge is the mini dissertation, the thesis, and all that goes with that. So that's actually what delayed my completion. Because you need headspace, you need guidance, you need a good supervisor, which thankfully I had two of. Um, and so it took a while, but actually I think I'm on par. Most people I assume take 3 years, 3 to 4 years to complete it if they're doing it part time.
I'm also thinking, actually, I'm looking into what else I can add onto myself. Because, well, I have a very selfish reason. I graduated during COVID time, so I didn't have a
Okay.
graduation. So
Oh,
I want to
okay.
study so that I can walk across the stage.
Yeah, you were robbed. You were robbed by
Really,
COVID.
I really was, but that's my own trauma to heal.
No, you deserve it. Absolutely, you deserve it.
Mm. Okay, so now after the research job, you went to work for Old Mutual. Okay, and you were a medical officer in Old Mutual. That just blows my mind because what do you even do as a medical officer in an investment firm?
Yeah. So, I mean, great question. I asked myself that on day one as well. I feel like all that we're going to speak about is how I blundered my way into positions, but it's not 100% true. It's somewhat true. So it's obviously a big pivot from clinical research into corporate medicine. Well, from clinical medicine to clinical research to corporate medicine seems like pivot, 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 and it was a big pivot. I mentioned that I loved the research study. I if it had not been for the fact that it was quite far, that my family was expanding, and that I was looking for a bit more job security, I would probably still be there to this day because I think I really, as I said, love the work. But for those reasons, I was looking for something else, and I saw this opportunity at for corporate. I applied. I tried to suss out from before and from somebody that I knew that still worked there, kind of what to expect. And yeah, I was successful. Again, big surprise to me. Thought there may have been better placed candidates. But to answer your second question, what you do as a uh, w- w- what is expected of a doctor in insurance medicine? Because that's a term I've also come to learn. Um, I didn't know. It was a complete new learning experience for me. Previously, I was calling people participants in clinical research, and in clinical medicine, you call them patients, and in corporate, you call them clients, just for example. So the
Wow.
lingo changes completely. Um, and I'm sure we'll touch on it in a moment, the challenges of a health person in a corporate business driven environment. But the day to day, as you begin, is that there's two fundamentals. The first fundamental is when people apply for life insurance. Life insurance includes policies that pay out when people die, and as well as living insurance. So living insurance is things like disability insurance, illness insurance, and those type of things. So when people apply for those policies, there's a certain level of risk which we must estimate, and based on that estimate, you provide a premium that they pay. So either a standard premium, or if they have lots of excess risks, they potentially have lots of comorbidities, you say, okay, well, we need to double your premium. And potentially, well, if this risk is far gone, your risk of a, a premature health outcome is too high, we actually will decline to offer you cover because we cannot recoup the money invested in terms of premium. So that's the one aspect. How do you guide the clinical decision making when people apply for policies? And then the second fundamental is when people apply for claims. Um, not so much on the life. That's usually cut and dry. Either they have passed away or they did not. It's more more on the living insurance side. So for disability claims and illness claims, and yeah, complex environment. Lots of jargon and lingo you have to learn, processes. Um, so steep learning curve. But thankfully, I had the opportunity to learn on the go. At that time, there was no formal training, so everything was, on the go. And again, thankfully, I had a great team, people that would mentor me, lessons that I would learn as I was going along. And yeah, if I look back, 7 years later, I feel like what I know now to what I know then, it's absolutely different. It's 7 years of specializing essentially, although not in a formalized specialized post. Um, the learnings that I know now, had I known then, would have obviously been completely different.
Wow. Okay, so I'm trying to imagine how the whole aspect that you speak about with regards to comorbidities and creating premiums for your clients work. Is there like an algorithm that you like put the clients through, or do you interview them? How does that come about?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there are these wizards of people. They're called actuaries. I didn't know about actuaries before I started this position. I mean, other than, they're kind of maths geeks. That's what you know about them. So these wizards of people, they design algorithms, guidelines, ratings, obviously in conjunction with people with the clinical insight to guide decision making. But obviously, there's still a lot of nuance in specific cases, and that's where um, that's where the role of the medical officer falls. The run of the mill easy things, uncontrolled hypertensive, for example, without target organ damage, you don't need a medical officer to be involved. But the more complex cases, that's where you have to apply some clinical reasoning, and especially in gray areas, that's where you have to apply clinical reasoning as well. And also a big part of the onboarding process is that in some instances where there is established cardiovascular risk, we call for a routine asymptomatic ECG to be done, stress ECG, resting and stress ECG. So part of the JD for medical officers in insurance medicine is to interpret ECGs. And what we're looking for is baseline risk, but also inducible ischemia as a result of stress. Obviously, which I had no knowledge of before, and let me just say. I mean, I brushed up on my undergrad notes of ECGs, but but for those that feel that that is a daunting task, don't let it get to you. If you're looking at 15 to 20 ECG tracings a day, it becomes absolute second nature to you. It's pattern recognition. Um, and especially if you know what you're looking for. As I said, inducible ischemia, um, undiagnosed coronary artery disease. That is the main cardiovascular risk factor we're looking for as part of the onboarding process. So it becomes quite easy after a while. To be honest, it's not It shouldn't be a daunting task at all. Whereas on the claim side, claims can still trap you. Claims can become complex, um, and especially those of a grey area nature. Mental health claims becomes quite complex to manage. Um, to answer your other question, no, so we don't do any physical assessments ourselves, but we have a network of usually general practitioners, sometimes specialists that perform the medicals for us, and then we would evaluate the findings. So it's all paper-based reviews of what has already transpired, and then you work with dedicated underwriters at underwriting stage and claims assessors at claims stage, um, that are not doctors. Sometimes they have a health background, physios, OTs, especially on the claim side. And then the more complex cases, that's when you would become involved.
Okay, okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, you would work with claims, you work with the processing, so you see ECGs and whatnot, and then also with the underwriting.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So they are standalone departments. We are standalone departments. They essentially consult with us for the more complex cases.
Okay, okay. So now besides ECGs, is there any other clinical data that you also refer to a lot?
Yeah, I mean, a host of clinical information. You, look, I didn't appreciate this early on. And if we're jumping forward to where I am now, it's really taking a step back to think, why are we calling for these tests in the first place? And if we take onboarding, so underwriting, if you, Diane, come to Old Mutual and say, listen, I want to take out a policy, what we and our wizard actuaries want to find out from you is, do you represent a higher or lower risk than the people we already have on our books? If you are a lower risk, that means that we can charge you less premium because we know that your risk of a health outcome is lower. If you're higher, how much higher? Is it substantial enough for us to say, no, Diane, please go somewhere else, which is our prerogative, actually, unlike a medical aid, just by the way. Or if it's minor, can we offer you a higher premium to account for your potential higher risk? Now, what I didn't appreciate at the time is, well, what is that risk? What are we specifically looking for at underwriting? And it took me a while to figure that out. And the primary risk is the risk of non communicable diseases, right? Diseases of lifestyle. Those are the primary things that result in premature death in the South African insured population. Of course, HIV is there, of course, but the insured population specifically, more often than not, is uh, non communicable diseases. Now, in NCDs, cancer is by far the biggest one, but it's difficult to quantify a potential cancer risk in the future. The second biggest, and in some instances, equally biggest risk is a risk of cardiovascular related incidents. We refer to as major adverse cardiac events, a heart attack, a stroke, or cardiovascular related death. So a MACE. MACE is fundamentally what we're trying to estimate when somebody applies for policy with us. And so all those tests that we would do to answer your question, it's all biometric related data. So age, sex, demographics, usually. But with that comes systolic and diastolic blood pressure, uh, total cholesterol and LDL, HDL cholesterol, random blood sugars, ECG could be part of it, and some other factors. But the reason that we're asking those tests is, yes, to screen for undiagnosed hypertension, undiagnosed dyslipidemia, but it's to take all of those risk factors in isolation and factor them together and anticipate what is Diane's 10-year risk of developing a MACE. And the way that we do that, it's from clinical research. There's major studies of a longitudinal nature that have been developed in this manner. Framingham, PCE, WHO charts, there's a whole host of them. We then take that information with our wizards, our actuaries, right, and fine tune it for our experience as South Africa, first of all, then the insurance industry, and then Old Mutual specifically. And then what that allows us to do is to risk stratify individuals at application stage, low, medium, high, in a nutshell, from a MACE cardiovascular risk perspective. There are some other risk factors, as I mentioned, HIV, cancer, mental health, but those are then based on the individual. Should the individual have a specific history of that? Um, if we ask them a subjective questionnaire, for example, they say they suffer from major depressive disorder, then we would offer further medicals related to that. And for mental health, it's usually questions to the psychiatrist, for example, or to evaluate the medication history. So it's fine tuned to the specific disclosures. But from a general perspective, the one that we are most concerned about and want to quantify again is the 10-year MACE risk, cardiovascular risk.
No, that's so interesting. So according to then the 10-year MACE risk that you use, is it then better to get these life insurances when you're younger as opposed to when you're older?
Pro tip, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I didn't come on this platform to sell all mutual products, just by the way. Let me just make that disclaimer. But it's another area of passion of mine. Maybe another podcast is the the absolute kind of misunderstanding of the financial literacy amongst junior professionals, and I put myself in that bucket as well. Really poor financial decisions sometimes. One of the decisions that I'm grateful for that I did take out was a life insurance policy at a young age. So, how life insurance typically works, life and living insurance, is that it's a snapshot of your health at a point in time that's then set. Now, certain companies, certain policies will change with time, will slightly increase with time, but technically, it's based still at that snapshot in time. So, if you're 25 years old, you have no comorbidities, your BMI is fine, you don't smoke, you don't drink, those are all extremely favorable for your risk assessment at the time. Whereas if you're a 55-year-old with multiple comorbidities and lifestyle risk factors, I mean, you can see the difference for us in terms of risk estimation. So the earlier you get in, the better. Absolutely. And we cannot all of a sudden say, and we see now that you're overweight and not that you are, you're overweight and that you smoke and that you drink and you've got all these comorbidities, therefore we're going to decline to give you a policy. That legally we cannot do that. So yeah, absolutely. It pays to come in at a healthier, younger price point, time in your life.
I don't think we are very much aware of that. I know I myself, I'm also in the bracket that you put yourself in, where we think because we're young, we still have so much life, let's not look at
Mm.
these things. But
Yeah,
the way that you're explaining it is it's best for it's best for all of us actually to put it on our to-do list a lot
yeah,
sooner than later.
yeah, yeah. A good financial advisor goes a very long way.
So now you mentioned also that you work in underwriting. To those who are unaware, what is underwriting?
Yeah, yeah. Medical underwriting. Well, okay, let me take a step back. Underwriting is a standalone department from ours. As I said, we consultants for them. But underwriting assesses risk at the stage when somebody applies for a policy. Part of that is medical underwriting, obviously, for which we get involved. And that's, as I mentioned, this whole spiel about assessing mostly MACE risk, but some others as well. But then you have financial underwriting, occupational underwriting, various other aspects. But fundamentally, it's there to say this person in front of me, are they a medium low risk for a medical for a medical factor, for a financial factor, etc. And it's there to be a gatekeeper to what's called a risk pool, which is our people that we have in books that have policies with us. Underwriting is to gatekeep and to say not too many risky people. We want mostly young and healthy people. Might not always be the case, but therefore we have to keep fine tuning so that things balance um, and that everybody can benefit.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense actually. Because if you have too many risky people, then they're going to be claiming a lot of payouts a lot sooner, and then that's not good for the business model.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah,
Mm, okay. So now in your career, you've moved up from a medical officer, then to a senior medical officer, and now you're the head of the research research and developmental space.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Does that mean that Old Mutual does research of their own as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. R&D in the corporate space and research in the corporate space is definitely different to research from a clinical medicine perspective. Um, Research and development for a corporate space is trying to drive a corporate agenda, right? So, not that you should ever do research for research purposes, and clinical research don't do that as well. But the endpoint is different. So the endpoint is we're doing this research, we're doing this development, we're coming up with solutions so that it can move a very specific business metric forward. That's why you're doing it. Otherwise, you won't get funding. Otherwise, you won't get Exco buy-in, for example. So it's a really tricky space to navigate. And if I may, I just wanted to take one step back and say one of the greatest challenges that I had in as a doctor working for in the insurance medicine space was that exact thing. My efforts, how do I make sense of my efforts as a health professional driving a business metric of a bottom line? And for a long time, that internal tussle kind of didn't make sense to me. Because what is my value here? If the company wants to make money, what do I know about making money? I'm a doctor. I have very low financial literacy. And I've come a long way, but it has taken time. And one of the insights I'd like to share with you is that for people that find themselves in similar to positions where I am in, we especially, I mean, as the theme of the podcast is this kind of unusual roles, is to find shared value. Find shared value. And for me, that was the turning point. For me, it was, well, when I speak to people in the business, I can't come with a clinical hat and say we need to do this initiative because it's going to make people healthier. The question would be, so what? Right? And that initially would stump me. It's like, what do you mean, so what? They're going to be healthier because as clinicians, that's what we focus on. But I've managed with time to find ways to reframe it. Where my value is I want to make people healthier, better health outcomes, live better, but the business wants to make money. So if I position that, okay, by doing this initiative, we're going to make money. Oh, by the way, we're also going to make people healthier. That's the convergence that I've come to learn with time. And now all our solutions are like that. We have that dual hat on all the time. And we often speak about shared value. Where's the shared value here? It's not to say that there aren't things that we should pursue, even though it doesn't make business money. I'm not saying that. But specifically in my space, where the purse strings aren't always that deep, and we have to prioritize and we have to motivate for the things that we do. We have to come with an understanding that this must make business sense first. But two things can be true. It can make business sense and it can deliver real value for people. So, in understanding that and in my research experience that I've had previously and the skills that I acquired with MPH and just generally an interest shown in doing things differently, I've been taking charge of research initiatives that our division has done for some time. And recently it was a formalization of that. It's to say, great, here's your mandate. Here's your mandate to develop new and innovative solutions that make the business money. But actually, internally, we know it's making the business money, but also making people healthier. And that's been our guiding light. And we hope that with this model, we can show great success.
I love what you said about shared value because that applies to so many spaces that we can find ourselves in life. And I think another industry that I thought of is the pharmaceutical medical aid space. A lot of people feel like these spaces, these corporate entities are just looking to take our money. And you need to position yourself as I'm not the bad guy. I'm actually trying to bring about change and helping people as well.
Yeah, and it takes time, and it takes time to grapple with that internally. Because for us, and I'm sure the same is for you and others, is that money is seen as such a dirty thing. We want to be doctors because it's pure, and we want to help people, and it doesn't matter about the money. There's so many people that, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have that attitude, but that's the environment in which you find yourself. So if you have this very noble drive, it can be a tussle internally, a turmoil internally to make sense of the money. But without money, nothing works, right? And another turning point for me was when I felt that I got a bit closer to the products that we sell. Um, and I didn't appreciate that initially. And it's only really once you started to hear success stories of what these type of products do for people and their families, and how much value it actually brings to people. When you have an individual, a breadwinning father, um, that is in his early 50s, that has a massive stroke and cannot work any longer, without financial assistance, um, their family would be decimated. Um, and beyond that, the sense of dignity is absolutely removed from that individual. I mean, completely self sufficient, the head of the household. Maybe I'm just projecting in my own mind. Like, not that I'm in my 50s, I should say. But imagine what that would do to the psyche of anybody, that not being able to provide, and now from being provided to need to be provided to. Um, um, and the assistance financially fundamentally provides dignity. And once I got closer to what our products do and I understood the value, it allowed a lot of that to ease. Um, the healthcare, the economics of healthcare is complex and the environment is broad. So the role that we can play in addressing some of these fundamental gaps, especially in the local South African healthcare ecosystem, um, yeah, I can say that I believe in our products, and I think more people, there's many people that don't have enough of it. Um, so that really allowed me to uh, figure out where the shared value is, as I mentioned.
Mm, wow. I love what you said about the dignity part. Did you find that it was a struggle to adapt as a medical profession in the corporate space?
Yeah, I think I touched on some of it, but definitely. Um, in the beginning, you come with really noble ideas. If we do this, then people will be healthier. And to be told, well, it costs too much, or, but yeah, great, but what benefit does the business have? Um, it was mind blowing. I didn't think, you hear people saying, well, business people, actuaries, bless them, just see people as numbers, but to see it in person, live, that you're still shocked by it. So yeah, it was a big struggle, and I struggled with that for a long time. Um, and thankfully, I think I've overcome it by addressing it from a understanding the product, understanding the shared value, and also the third factor I think is also, if you don't have health professionals in companies like ours, in financial companies, can you imagine the type of decisions that would be made? Because I have
Mm.
countless examples where we would sit in discussions about product design, about policy decisions, claims decisions, where people that don't have a health background give a perspective that's absolutely bonkers. And then you say, no, hang on, have you thought about this health outcome? Have you thought about people that have access to healthcare in the South African health ecosystem and this localized contextual factor? It doesn't make sense what you say. And I can say that because of XYZ. So had we not been there as a gatekeeper and as an advocate really for people, the type of decisions that would have been made. So it felt empowering, but also daunting to have that kind of responsibility rest with you. And that
Mm.
that I think just really spurred me on for all of those reasons to be quite at ease of where I am at the moment.
Wow. Patient advocacy is very big in the clinical
Mm,
space. It's interesting
mm.
to also see how it's also happening in boardrooms in big fancy buildings that we know nothing about.
Yeah, and it's usually not on a uh, one-on-one basis. It's usually on a population level. If we make this decision, this is how people will be affected. That's the opportunity we have, which is different, but actually a greater impact on occasion, um, because the decisions that you're advocating for have the potential to impact many more people.
Besides patient advocacy, is there any other similarity or like a similar skill that you've had to take from clinical medicine that you see it also being applied now in the corporate insurance space?
Yeah. So look, there's the obvious things like the you are interpreting clinical information for a business need. So in a clinical environment, you're interpreting clinical information for a clinical need. So, but you still need those skills. As a practical example is the ECG, but there are others as well. The clinical notes, the PFT, the blood tests, biometric data. That's clinical information that you're interpreting for a very specific business need. But I think the greater overlap for me was the skills from clinical research for where I am now, and from the MPH. So there's not a day that goes by that you're not researching a condition or checking up to date or doing a literature review or something, preparing a presentation or solution that requires clinical research understanding and application. Really, there's not a day that goes by that I don't apply those skills. So, although it was not intentional, the skills that I have from the MPH in clinical research fundamentally on a day to day assist me for what I'm doing now. And also, I mean, probably guided my transition into where I am now because I have the skill set and this knowledge base and this willingness to apply it in the R&D space in a corporate sense.
And I see how there's so much overlap with the clinical medicine, the research, and also the MPH, because MPH is very much population focused and they're all
Mm,
coming together and like in your
yeah,
role right now.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
They say that success leaves clues, and I feel like your clues is in the research and the public health space. So that's very interesting to note. Mhm. So another thing I saw from your LinkedIn while I was stalking it was you elective that you are positioning for medical students.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe some context. We as as you would have realized by now, try to wear these dual hats of insurance medicine. We are doctors in insurance. So one of our roles really is to try and bridge the gap and build the relationship between doctors and insurers. Um, because there's often been a historical tension there. Um, the guy at the public clinic goes with a 17-page insurance document to be filled in, only to be scolded at because why are you coming here with nonsense forms, right? Or even at the GPs don't want to fill in the forms. Um, and that relationships needs building. And we think who better to build it than us. And so we've done a few things in this space. The first was last year we launched a course. It was a postgraduate course on EM guidance, the first in South Africa, first of its kind, of a CBD accredited insurance medicine course. And I started off a bit earlier saying that there's so many lessons that I wish I had known 7 years ago. Well, this is it. So we've taken all our experiences, my colleague and I, all our experiences, we've researched it thoroughly. We've got multimodal kind of material. It's a blend really of theoretical knowledge with practical case studies, um, touching on legal frameworks, ethical scenarios, what we expect from GPs, what we expect from people that interact with insurers, and conversely, what you should expect from us, right? And we put it in
Mm.
a really well structured course, which at its core is really trying to address that, which is we need to understand each other better. You need to understand us, and we need to understand you. And then the second part is really about trying to bridge those gaps. So part of it is along that mentorship journey, along that. This is typically a field which doctors, medical students don't have exposure to. I certainly had no idea a field like this even existed. And it's about bridging gaps, about building relationship, but also about giving back, right? So come
Mhm.
and experience. So the opportunity is, it's an open invitation. Medical student primarily, actually only. Let me reiterate, it's not for qualified doctors. So I know across the country, medical schools have elective programs. By all means, make contact with us. We'll provide you with hands-on training, exposure to what we do, structured learning as well, um, and all with the thought of greater exposure for the work that we do, the place that we do, ultimately with the goal of improving the doctor-insurer relationship.
Mm. I think also another thing that you guys can maybe put on the table to work on is maybe like a job shadowing opportunity for doctors, because that would be
Yeah,
very cool.
I knew that was coming. Sure, I will take it. I will take it to the team, and we will put our heads together.
Because we don't know what happens on
Yeah,
the other side.
yeah.
I just remember from my clinic days when I was working in the clinics in my not comp serve internship, and the patients come with the 17-page documents, and you're like, do they really need to know all this information? They know you're sick, and that is enough.
That should be fine. Mm. I mean, as a side, that's a core focus area of our research, just by the way, is to improve that dynamic. Why do we need that information? Can we reduce a lot of it? Can we get that information from other sources? And then, of the information we desperately need, how do we make it as slick and easy as possible for the doctor to deliver it to us? And yeah, it's a key area of research for ours, and it stemmed from, you know, working in those environments and being really annoyed when people come with those forms. um, so it's a responsibility, right? But it's a both ways responsibility. Us as insurers to say, yeah, we need to come to the party to rethink what we are requesting. But doctors also to just be aware that, you know, this is not some admin burden. This is somebody's life. This is the policy that they're applying for. This is their financial dignity. And in some instances, that means more to them than their physical health. And who are we to judge them?
Because it's not only for themselves, it's for their future generations. It's for
Yep,
their kids as well.
their loved ones. Yep.
In yourself, have you noticed any soft skills that you've had to develop in order to thrive in this environment?
Yeah, lots of soft skills, communication, conflict resolution. Um, I think one of the more challenging ones to develop is remaining quiet. Um, Often as doctors, you're thrusted into leadership positions whether or not you like it. And coming into an environment where people still have a reverence for doctors, you know, no matter how many times I introduce myself to a colleague at Old Mutual as Adil, they will say, Dr. Khan, Dr. Khan. So there's all that remains. And so even when you are not the most knowledgeable person in the room, or the instances where you are, depending on the subject matter that's been discussed, there is an inherent need to fill that void with something to say because that's what we taught, right? Take the initiative. Don't wait for the person, for somebody else in the team to initiate a resus. If you see the guys crashing, you go resus him yourself. So that drive is there. So especially as I get a bit more senior in the company, that's not leadership. That's not a leadership position always. Sometimes you have to be deliberately mindful of those around you, especially those that are more timid or those that feel that they are don't have so much to share. That you have to create that psychological safety for them to share. Um, Work in progress, shall I say?
No, it's okay. As long as you are aware, you know what the next thing is you need to work on, and that shows
Mm.
initiative.
Hmm.
What does the future look like with regard to the intersection of healthcare and insurance in South Africa? Is it still a growing industry? Yeah, what's the future?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So to answer that question, I suppose we have to ask ourselves, well, do we believe that the products that we sell or the insurance, life insurance landscape in South Africa is still relevant and will be relevant? I think so. South Africa, as I mentioned earlier, has a massive what's called insurance gap um, compared to global standards. Many people don't have access to these types of products, and if they do, the drop-off rate is very high, and you can understand why. You know, if you can't put food on the table, why would you still keep paying your insurance premium? So it's often the first to go as the economical burden rises with households. But it's still there, and it will likely be there for a very long time to come. Um, so the future, though, from a product perspective, is we have to continually be closer to our customers and understand their needs and change as their needs change. Um, it might not always be the same. It might not always be that we have structured life insurance products in the future. But what must remain is the principles, and the principles is um, transparency when it comes to our product design, transparency with our onboarding processes, and commitment in of fulfilling claims when the time is there. Those are the principles I think that allow us, as we say, to restore that financial dignity at the time of calamity. Um, those principles should remain. And then what the specifics are of the products, um, that might change with time. My role though is, as I said, it's more on the onboarding process. How do you make it slick and efficient? And there it's very exciting because there's so much development in clinical medicine, clinical research, especially when it comes to risk stratification, when it comes to data aggregation and the type of information we have access to, and how we can be creative in terms of coming up with decisions quicker and quicker and quicker, which again, where's the shared value at? Can we determine more information about applications with less tests at a cheaper cost point, where we can potentially unearth even more undiagnosed hypertension, diabetes, HIV, um, which is the information the business needs to make an informed decision. But also, as part of our normal processes, it's a responsibility on us to link those people into care. Because, I mean, if we diagnose somebody with HIV, we don't wipe our hands with it. We have a mechanism to direct them towards ART, although we don't physically offer them treatment ourselves. So that again is the shared value. It's a very exciting space to be in because it means potentially greater health screening, potentially greater access to care, and ultimately align with our business initiative of ease of getting people onto books much simpler and quicker and cheaper.
It sounds like there's a lot of strategy and a lot of you're working and you have your hands in a lot of pies. Well, in a lot of pots. I think that's the phrase.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that strategy word is key. We have a North Star, which is get us sales, if I'm frank, right? But um, and it should be like, I mean, I'm not saying that to be funny about the business. A business has to make money, but how we apply that is up to us, and we apply it through again the shared value lens. And strategy is critical to that. Without strategy, we can't be able to develop to deliver on shared value. So yeah, to answer your question, shared strategy is central to what we do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think one thing I've taken from your journey and your story is that put yourself in places that you feel like you don't belong because you never
Yeah.
know. That might change your life.
Yeah. Be comfortable with the uncertainty. And it's so daunting. It's so daunting because um, if if you have a clear career path, like I mentioned earlier, the eager beavers that want to be surgeons, you may have complicated challenges along the way, night shifts, primaries, finding a post, but it's still quite clear where you're headed. For people like myself and many others, where you don't know what the future lines, it's complex. So there are different steps to get there. Um, and maybe you have an idea, maybe you don't, but allow yourself grace to know that whatever you are learning now is still beneficial. And as long as you have the willingness to apply those skills in a way that's transferable to wherever you land up, and to be true to yourself and true to your values, then I think that should be sufficient. Um, I must say it's not for everybody. Let me not sugarcoat it. Some people can't live with the uncertainty, and that's fine. No no harm, no foul. For me, I love it. I love that I can determine. I don't know what the future holds, and I find it very exciting. Um, and I trust myself that I will eventually figure it out. I have a few people that I speak to for mentorship as well, but that the path is unknown. I find that very exciting.
I think whether you're someone who thrives with uncertainty or you're not, because we don't know what tomorrow holds, we all have to address how we hold that. So it's a very good point to ponder and think on.
Yeah.
When you mentioned primaries, I just randomly wondered, is there continuous learning that you also do in the space to keep up to date with like what's happening internationally in the insurance world and things like that?
Not formally. I mean, we still have to be CPD compliant, obviously, um, but not formally. Uh, but there's a host of these informal things that we have across the industry, conferences, seminars, um, and then the day-to-day readings that we have to do to keep ourselves abreast. It is interesting in other markets. In the US, for example, you have a specialization. You have a MEd in insurance medicine. So you can be a insurance medicine specialist, which I know sounds bizarre, but it's also part of, we don't have that in South Africa. We don't have anything of that nature, which is also why we decided to develop the short course, because other before we developed the short course last year, it didn't exist. So we do want to bring more of that kind of material back to the market in South Africa. We think there's a gap here. And based on the uptake of our course, just by the way, I think there's a real drive for more and more of this type of content. And who knows? Maybe we have a diploma in insurance medicine or a masters of insurance medicine course in the future in South Africa. I would love to be an honorary lecturer.
That would be so cool. You could be not only the lecturer, but like the head of faculty or something for it.
Yeah, well, my boss will ask is how is Mutual going to make money from it? And that's what I have to think about.
Publicity, publicity.
Yeah, uh, I'll help you write the motivation. You'll help me write the motivation.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Just to end off, we are in a space where unemployment is prevalent in our profession.
Yeah.
How would you advise a doctor who doesn't know what's coming next? How would you advise them to go about this journey or this time in their life?
A few things. Um, Try and upskill as much as you can, even if you don't have lots of resources financially. Um, there's a ton of things online, courses that you can do at either a very low cost point or free. Uh, think broadly about the topics that you're interested in and have a look online. There's so many, as I said, free courses. That's the one. The second thing is throw on LinkedIn like you did, Dan. Um, you know, the, I took me so long to develop a LinkedIn presence. I didn't understand it. I didn't. What is this place? But people are so willing to engage if you ask them. If you see somebody's in an interesting position, DM them, ask them for a coffee or a WhatsApp call. What's it to them? And more often than not, they'll be willing. And ask them for guidance, or you know, ask them how they got to where they are. Ask them whatever you want to ask them. Um, and then lastly, I think it's difficult to maintain perspective because you tired of doing locum shifts. You're tired of working to the EC. You're tired of you know potentially being in a job that you absolutely hate. But be gracious to yourself. Be kind to yourself. You are on a transition period. Usually, that post-com service, more often than not, for the subsequent couple of years, people are in transition. It's in fact more normal to be in transition than to be automatically into a REACH program, just based on the number of posts that are available. So if you're feeling stagnant, if you're feeling, you're unhappy in your role, you know, have the grace, have the kindness to say eventually will be where you need to be. And it will probably happen quicker than you think.
What I've seen even among my friends is during the unemployment time, you really use that time to know what it is that you want and to like try to charter a way towards it because you now have the freedom to do so.
And mentorship is so important there. That point I made about LinkedIn, but whoever, if you have family members, friends, older cousins, reach out, ask them. And they don't even necessarily have to be in the medical field, just people that have been there, done that in some form. Ask for guidance. It goes a long way, even if it's just encouragement.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
My pleasure.
If the people want to reach you, do you just want them to reach you via LinkedIn?
Yeah, that might be the easiest. I'm always open for a DM, and I'm open for a chat. If it's students that want to find out more about the program, by all means, let's chat.
Or they can be coming to you for mentorship.
Sure. We can grab a coffee.
To hit up Adil on LinkedIn. I promise you, I can speak from experience. You are very friendly and welcoming in your DMs. So at least I'm setting the example for the many that will come. Just to close off the episode, my name is Dr. Diane, and this has been our doctoring. I hope I've given you permission to be a different kind of doctor and to think of a different way to express the doctor that you are inside.